So I think now's the time to bring in our final guest from out in the cold, where hopefully he was not doing all that much skiing or anything today. Daniel Liu, who is a product manager, I believe. And Daniel's going to talk to us a little bit about visual runbooks designer from AWS Systems. So, moderator, can we bring Daniel in?
Let's bring
All
Daniel
right.
up.
Hey, Daniel.
Hey, Daniel, how's it going?
Hey, good. How's it going?
Good.
Good.
We are excited to have you. Where are you?
Yeah,
Where are you sitting right now, Daniel?
yeah. Thanks for having me. I'm based in Seattle. I'm at the office right now. I'm in Blackfoot on the top floor. Got a great view. I would turn the camera, but it's just gonna be a lot of light. But I can see the Space Needle from where I'm sitting. It's an awesome view. And all this talk
Good.
about skiing, you guys got me excited about my trip up to Whistler in a couple of weeks. So I'm excited for that.
Oh,
All
I heard
right.
that Whistler had crazy lines. Is that
Yeah.
still true, or is it getting better with the season?
I'm not sure. I'm just hoping
You'll
that
find
we
out.
get yeah, I'll find out in a couple weeks.
Yeah, that is one mountain that I can't really get to for a weekend from New York City. It is objectively too far
A little
and too
bit.
many planes. But that's not what we're here to learn about.
You
We could
can
talk
move
about
out
skiing
here.
all day.
Yeah. All right. So, Daniel, you want to give us an overview of who you are, and let's talk a little bit about your service here, and maybe just give us an overview of the service so that we can get into the demo as well. Which folks out there, we have one more demo coming up here.
Absolutely. So I'm a product manager for AWS Systems Manager. And one quick plug on that. So I'll talk about Systems Manager as a whole. We have some other products within Systems Manager, so things like Incident Manager. And I've always wanted to be able to say that I'm the manager for Systems Manager, Incident Manager. There's been some funny tweets out there saying like that would just be funny how there's like 3, 4 layers
How
of
many managers can we
managers.
have in
Exact.
one tech service that isn't people managing?
Technically, my boss is the manager of the product manager of Systems Manager, Incident Manager. So I've seen a tweet out there for that, and they're like, that'd be a pretty cool job.
That's
But anyways,
it's good to fit
By the
in.
way, we
Anyone
did
in
get
yeah,
a comment, Daniel, about the free bananas across the street from you. So just a note, yes, they're still out there. So if you
Yes.
want a free banana, go out there by the spheres
Yeah.
and grab one. All right, Daniel, I interrupted.
yeah. Anyways, so Systems Manager as a whole is one of many AWS products and services out there. We have a collection of about 20 different features. The way you can think about Systems Managers, it's like a toolkit for DevOps and IT teams. It's a centralized place where they can choose different tools for different use cases, really. For people that do use Systems Manager today, a lot of them know us as great for node management. What node management really is like managing your fleet of EC2 instances. So that can be things like running commands on your fleet of instances, or patching, for instance, or storing parameters and configuration files and things like that. But we also have other services that are more in like the operations management space. Things like Incident Manager, which you heard me name drop once. We have things called Op Center to help you manage like issues that are going on with your cloud infrastructure. And then we have the feature that I'm going to talk about today, which is Systems Manager Automation, which is more of a platform feature that enables you to use some of these other features within Systems Manager much more seamlessly. So everybody knows probably what automation is, like conceptually, just automating tasks, doing things, getting rid of like manual labor. That's the goal of the automation service within Systems Manager. Now, the core concept that you have to understand for automation and how it works is this artifact, or we call them documents, called runbooks. The industry term, you'll
Mm,
hear some variation depending on maybe what company you're talking to. Some call them playbooks. We call them runbooks here. And
okay.
for automation, basically you define a runbook, which is a sequence of steps that you want to take action on your AWS resources. The reason why you want to do that is because, traditionally, before technologies like this were available, you would actually have an operator go and manually perform tasks, manually, shut off instances, manually attach storage volumes to your instances. Doing some of these things to production environments, like, yes, you can trust those operators to do that, but anytime you get a human involved doing manual tasks, it can be a little bit risky. So as part of like one of AWS's general principles, like the well-architected framework, we want to try to mitigate as much risk as possible, do things securely, do things operationally efficiently, and so that's really the goal of automation. So
that was, and I love that spiel. That was a good spiel, Daniel. I feel like I just learned a lot in a small amount of time. So hopefully
yeah,
everyone in the comments is also feeling that. That was super informative.
yeah, as you can tell, I'm pretty excited about the idea of
That's
automation
awesome.
in general. So I can go ahead and dive into the demo. Really what this
Yeah.
is basically an easier way for customers to build runbooks, because traditionally you'd either have developers actually coding up runbooks. Runbooks can be written in like YAML or JSON files. And before the launch of this visual designer, we had kind of like a lightweight feature which allowed customers to do a lot of clicking and choosing actions from drop downs and stitching things together. And this is just an upgraded experience because it's all visual. So I'll go ahead
Got
and
it.
share my screen so you guys can see what
Yeah.
it is that I'm talking
Are
about.
Yeah, why don't you do
like
that?
you're on the edge of your seat. What is the question that you're
I don't
withholding
have a
from us?
question. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
I'm kind of like I'm taking all of it in, Gigi.
Yeah.
I don't actually. I wish I had a comment, but like the summary Daniel's provided is more than sufficient for me.
Yeah.
So
Are you
Oh
all able
all
to
boy.
right,
see my
All right,
screen?
we're in the console. So you're before you get going on this, Daniel, because we just hopped to the console, can you
Yep.
give us a quick rundown on where we are, how we got to this spot, just so that way everybody can play catch up?
Yep. Sounds
Because
good. Yeah. I wasn't sure,
yeah,
and I can even start over. It's only a few clicks. Um,
sure.
I'm in the AWS management console. I went to Systems Manager. Here you can see our many different features here and a lot of different managers, right? Change manager, fleet
Lots
manager,
of managers on
lots
managers.
of
And
managers.
I've seen in the chat, you wouldn't believe the number of managers that are on the console.
But
They're not people.
we're in
It's a
the
lot of hands.
automation console here, and I'm going to go to click Create Runbook, and I'm just going to take you through a very simple example of a runbook here. We're basically just going to create like a two-step runbook that restarts an EC2 instance, where basically all you do is like stop your instance and then start it again, kind of like turning on and off your phone.
Got it.
Yeah, but that's a pretty important mechanism. By the way, I just want to make mention about the turning off and stopping. This is kind of what most people do when they get started, right? You have to start and stop, and also starting and stopping involves like making sure you free up and your resources once you're finished completing the task as well, which is so maybe a little bit of a lesson when you start using the console, the importance, or start using these as well, right?
Yeah,
All
exactly.
right.
So I'm just going to first, before I start building this runbook, just get everyone oriented to what it is you're looking at. The first thing you want to do is name your runbook, something probably more useful than this, but just wanted to keep on theme here with the other demo. On the
Very
left-hand
nice.
side here, these are basically your building blocks. These are your automation actions that you would stitch together and build what sequence of steps that you want to be automated, right? And so you have basic, programming type steps here like loops and branches. We have some scripting actions where you can, run a script that's very flexible, a very powerful action. And I'll actually double click on this one later. And then you have some like actions that are just purely for taking actions on your resources. And for our viewers out there, resources, you're going to hear that term a lot, but that can be things like your instances, your storage, etc. But here, like I said, we're going to just stop and start an instance. This is the canvas here. It's pretty intuitive. You can drag around, and then on the right hand
By the way,
side, this is
we've got a compliment on our UI, so I just want to bring it
It's a
up
win.
because
thank
there's a
you,
UI
thank
designer
you,
out there, right? Yeah.
yeah,
And
thank you.
then one other person just asked, what is an action? You mentioned taking an action. Maybe we should define for lickety split what an action is as well.
Yeah, really under the hood, what these actions are API calls. APIs is fundamentally what AWS is, where you are basically making calls to all these different services within AWS so that you can accomplish them. You can think of them as like operations. And the actions for Systems Manager are you can think of it as like almost a layer up where we abstract away a lot of like the coding and everything. But under the hood, it's all APIs. And if you want to get down to the most granular level here, not only do we have access to our like 22 actions, you actually have access to all the AWS APIs as well that are publicly available. You can search for them. You can scroll down and find them categorized by, you know, compute, storage, etc. Find the service you want, find the API call you want to make.
All right.
So
yeah, I love the easy accessibility. Excuse me, having word trouble this afternoon, Gigi. But
Yeah,
I
you
mean, this, I know this makes it really simplistic. The drag and drop.
Yeah.
You know, when I used
Yep.
to code software, this did not exist, and so to kind of update the runbook and be able to simplify the effort and make this a lot easier for anybody. It gives a great way to get started. And sometimes I know there's some chatter about, you know, coding and not coding or our collective abilities on doing that, but this helps simplify things and also makes you less prone to have an error as well. And, you know, a lot of times, I don't know about others, when I coded, you know, it's all the simplistic steps is where you make an error. And so this like helps you move forward and faster. So sorry.
Yeah, and
totally. Yeah, go ahead, Gigi.
I know at some point you're going to click the code button at the top left-hand side, and I'm excited for you to do that. But that your comment art just made me think like how nice it would be to have the visualization when you're talking about it, even if you prefer to code, even if you don't want to be playing around with blocks. But then it gives you this tool that then at least gives you a mechanism for, you know, having conversation about it in a visual manner, maybe with a product manager like us who, you know, as someone might have said, isn't doing hello world anymore like we did maybe in college. It does help those of us who are less fluent.
Yep. Yeah. So just picking up where I left off, you can see I already put together like the two main steps that are here. I named them stop instance, start instance. I'm using this action called change instance state. There's still a little bit more you have to do there than just purely dragging and dropping the blocks. You can see here, it's bright red here calling to your attention. It even has a little warning sign. And then up here, we have an error badge that collects everything and says there's some errors found that need attention. And naturally, what it's going to do is it's going to link me to the parts where I still need to put some information in to get rid of these errors. So for this step in particular, to stop the instance, we're going to need to put in some instance IDs. I could actually, you can see here, there's a drop down. This knows that there are some instances that I have running right now. I could actually like hard code those in. But a better practice or a better option would be to parameterize these things. Basically, what a parameter is, you can think about it as you know, an input that you would fill in later. You can think of this runbook as a template that you could then create and reuse multiple times. And you want to put in a parameter, like an instance ID in this case, that you can select when you need to use it. So I'm going to click off of the building blocks here and go to this parameters section here and click add parameter. And we'll just quickly make a instance IDs parameter. And it's pretty self-explanatory. You add a name, you can choose a data type. For this one here, we actually have a specific one where we could do a list of EC2 instances. I'll click that. And then that's basically all we need. I can add a little description here. List your instance IDs. And we'll just go ahead and close that. And you'll see now when I go back to this for the input, you can see that I'll actually be able to click instance IDs and it'll just drop that in there for me. Again, I could have just typed that out, but setting a global parameter that I can then use, like imagine I had like 40 steps instead of having to do that every time, you could then, it would be like one of the options that I could select from. And then I'll change this for the stop instance. We want the instance to be stopped. And then we'll go ahead and fix the other step here. We'll go to the inputs and do the same thing. Choose instance IDs. And we'll actually make this one running. So at this point, I could publish the runbook, but I want to just showcase a couple other features. before we publish this and actually run this thing. So one of the cool things here is, I talked about developers being a persona that were the primary folks that were actually building the runbooks, coding them, probably writing up these JSON files or YAML files in their own IDEs. Well, we actually do support a code editor as well. And you can see here, so you could actually still code this and you would get the visualization generated simultaneously. It goes both ways. And it's interactive. You can click on a specific step and it'll show you what code that actually corresponds to. And so it's a pretty cool feature. It supports JSON and YAML. It'll automatically render and change your coding language.
I just want to say how impressed I am that it moves so quickly. By the way, Daniel, like we've got JSON and then we have YAML here. And for those who are asking a lot of questions about coding at AWS or coding and maybe the three of us, why would somebody be doing this who doesn't code? This isn't really replacing anybody's coding. This is kind of, I mean, all of us who have done coding, you spend a lot more time than you would like to admit doing kind of what I would characterize as basic functions that sometimes you repeat every day. I mean, you stop an instance. In this case, you start an instance over and over again. And it's what's in between is really what the company you work for, whether it's Amazon or someplace else, is actually, that's the kind of key thing that you're doing. So a lot of these functions help reduce the amount of time you have to spend doing what I would characterize as just basic cleanup and getting started and stopping sort of activities here. So hopefully this is not like for a lack of knowledge or something about coding. This is also kind of helps with that overall simplification as well here.
Yeah.
I think that's a nice way to put it for sure. Systems Manager, as wonderful as a product as it is, it's not where you want to be spending 100% of your time coding, managing all of these operational functions.
That's right.
And the development that Daniel's team is doing is helping reduce that time that you have to spend, which is awesome.
Exactly.
Definitely.
All right.
For the sake of brevity, I want to be able to demonstrate like creating and running this runbook. So I'll quickly just cover this last part here. Similar to the errors, we do provide some best practices or recommendations. These are technically optional, but they should be just, looked at and understood. So I wanted to cover that here. So for example, it's going to tell you like, put an actual good description here for your runbook. As long as you write something out, that recommendation will go away. It'll talk about things like assume roles, which are basically the role that you want this runbook or the automation service really to take on behalf. Like, a role could be something like an admin role. It's really just defining the privilege. For the purpose of this runbook, I'm logged in as an admin. I'll go ahead and just create this. I can run it under my account credentials. So we'll acknowledge that, create the runbook. And like I said, we're just doing a very simple restart. So here you can see when you execute the runbook, so we created the runbook. You can see there at the top, your runbook was successfully created. I could go and view the details, but let's just actually go and run this now. You can go down here and these are the parameters I was talking about. I can select one of these instances. I'll choose test instance 1, for instance, to just restart. And then we can go ahead and execute this. And you'll see execution has been initiated. And just so you guys can see what's actually going on behind the scenes here, I have the EC2 console pulled up. And you can see here, here's my list of instances, test instance 1, which is the one we restarted. If I refresh this page, you can see that it's no longer running. I'll get rid of this filter. And we can see it's stopping right now, right? And that's exactly what we wanted to do. We wanted to stop and then restart it. So this might take 30 seconds or a minute or so to actually do. So you can see it's stopped now. We'll come back to that and check on it in a minute. Because the other thing that I wanted to just share, not only can you visualize runbooks now when you're authoring, the other thing is that Systems Manager, we provide over 300 out-of-the-box runbooks for you to get started with, things that we feel are like common operational tasks. And so these, along with any other runbooks that you create, will have the visualization feature even when you view them. So for read-only mode, because this is actually something that customers had asked us when they're building more and more complex workflows, they want to be able to like actually see the runbook logic. I'll go to a slightly more complicated one, just as an example. This is a resize instance. You can see here, just quickly being able to at least see, okay, this is probably about 5 steps. Great. If we're going with the skiing analogy, this would maybe be like a green, right? Well, why don't we look at like a black diamond then? I know I had this one prepared because I just wanted to show the audience how complicated some of these can get. This is one I don't even know fully in depth what this does, but just so you guys can see here, this is like, I think a 40, 50 step process here. So these are things that, there are workloads that can be automated. And obviously it'll take some time. It'll take some time to familiarize yourself with the service, with the tool and everything. But the purposes here is if you can prevent having to do 47 manual steps and you can automate that, that's like the opinionated way. So,
yeah. And I think it makes it even more understandable for people. Sometimes all of us learn a little bit differently, and being able to look through the run book is a great way for somebody who's joining your team or taking a look at it when you're running it. It's another way to demonstrate and display how to do something. And I entirely cut Gigi off, but my point was important, Gigi. Just kidding.
It was important, and technically I also cut you off, so it's okay. I did have just one question I saw pop up that I thought was interesting. What happens, and if we were ever to, and do we ever change the internal versioning of what's happening behind those drag and drop blocks? So is that code ever going to change or be edited and then impact something down the line, or are you safe from version control in some format?
Are you referring to the runbooks that we provide, or are you talking about when I'm actually authoring and like the actual like individual actions? Sorry.
So I would say individual actions is my first question. In the chat, if you want something else, let us know. But I'm thinking, like, if I were to drag and drop a bunch of things, right, and I'll create my own runbook, is there any time where AWS would go ahead and change what's going on behind one of those blocks and it actually negatively impact my work and it would stop working, surprisingly?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
So, I mean, over the course of automation's history, I mean, it's longer than I've been here. I know we've added actions, and we will continue to add more actions based on, customer requests, and obviously go through and assess those. We also do make updates to some of those actions, and obviously, if there was some breaking change with one of those actions, we would notify you for sure. The documentation is all there for all of our actions. We can drop those in the chat, but at least in my time here, we've only made updates and hopefully improvements to the actions rather than things that would mess up your workflows.
That's good to know. And with those automated errors that pop up at the top, I'm sure that's helpful too if something changes.
Yep.
Great.
So yeah, that wraps up the demo. I mean, as you can see here, our test instance 1 is back up and running, so it's successfully restarted. You can still see it's initializing, but yeah, thanks for having me on here.
Thanks, Daniel. This was awesome.
This was great. Sorry, Gigi. Boy, oh boy, stepping on each other left and right here.
We're just on the same page. We're on the same energy level.
So true. Well, Daniel, I want to thank you again for coming out today. It's always fun to do a demo, especially when it's kind of easy to understand like this, and also kind of shows some additional product improvements as well. So thank you very much for joining us. And I just want to extend a thanks to everybody out there as well for joining us again today. And we'll probably drop the link to our survey in one more time here. So anybody who's joining us, please take a look at the survey, provide us with lots of feedback. And, this is how we make decisions about what to do, what to broadcast. If you have any questions for any of us, it's a great way to give us that feedback and to kind of interact with us. And you can connect with Gigi or myself or Daniel on LinkedIn or other social media that are out there if you have any questions about these topics as well. So, and I just want to thank everybody for joining us today. I think that's all we have time for, Gigi.